Good afternoon, everyone. I don't think it's working. Good afternoon. Just seeing if the microphone is working. Can you hear me? Folks, can you hear me yet? Sort of? I think we need, now is that okay? Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to everyone who is here. It's great to see you at this latest budget forum and open house. It's a little bit different today in that President Timmons has joined us. And I just want, before we get started, to remind you that we're recording this so that people who are not on campus, our many students and faculty and staff in Saskatoon and elsewhere in the province, are able to watch this via video. We hope to have the video up on the budget update webpage probably by tomorrow, if everything goes well. And the slide presentation will be up there as well. Also want to add that the comprehensive budget plan will be posted to that website if it isn't already there. And as I'll say later on, the detailed budget letter that will go out to all of the unit managers will be up there probably by just after lunch on Friday. We're just doing final revisions to that. So again, if you just notice, please, we need to say this now kind of legally. Your presence indicates your consent to have your speech and image recorded, made available from the public webpage for others to view as part of this series of consultations. And again, to make this discussion available to all members of the university community. So welcome, and I'd like now to ask you to join me in welcoming President Timmons, who's going to make some opening remarks.
Okay. As you know, Tom and Dave have previously done budget forums, but I, in this term, had not done an open town hall. So what I did is I actually crashed his budget forum and said this is also an opportunity for me to speak to the campus and also give a bigger context. So that's what I've done. I crashed his budget forum. I asserted my presidential authority for it. You know, I know all of you are interested in the budget, but I thought it's also a time to do a bit of reflection over the past year and what we've accomplished, sort of some highlights and some challenges, and also it gives me an opportunity to hear from you and questions and concerns. So though the main focus will be budget, I really encourage you to ask questions that go beyond even the budget. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the university is on Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 territory. That's part of our history and an important part of our future. And your strategic plan, Payakaski Kigawi now, acknowledges that and highlights that. And so you'll hear me say that more and more when I open forums and speeches, because it's a sign of respect for the land we are on, that we are guests of. So some key areas that I want to just highlight that we'll be focusing on in the next 5 years: student success, and, in particular around recruitment and retention and support of students with challenges. Mental health challenges, as you know, is a real issue across the country. Student safety, another real issue across the country. We've been fortunate at the University of Regina. We haven't had loud public incidents of that, but many places across Canada have. And you saw the Dalhousie Facebook incident. You saw other ones, Ottawa hockey team. We are trying to be proactive around those kinds of instances by educating our students, working with them. And we've done wonderful things this year, like the whole Man Up initiative was fabulous to help us with that. Research impact, as you saw, some of the data that we have on research impact is that in comprehensive universities in Canada, we really lead in the traditional form of research impact, which is number of citations of your articles as faculty. And we're trying to figure out our vast statement where we look at real research impact in our communities. Is there any way we can measure that? How does your research, my research, make a difference for the individual, the person in Regina, person in Saskatchewan, or person in the world? So we're going to be trying to focus a little more on that. And commitment to community has really been part of our strat plan, one of the pillars, one of my real priorities. If we don't have community support at a university, as a university, we are vulnerable. And I think we've seen public confidence in universities and institutions across the country decrease. And our job is to try to make sure that our Regina public are our advocates, talk publicly about the importance of their university and therefore highlight the benefits that the community gets when the investments are made in the university. And it's harder and harder, as you know, to get government investment. And the only way we're going to get it is if our public supports us. Because if government feels that it's not an issue for the public, we're not going to see the funding that we really need happen. Indigenization and sustainability are the threads that we will be looking at every initiative on campus, as you know, and builds on our last plan. And financial sustainability is one of them, environmental sustainability, but also in the strat plan, social and cultural sustainability were identified as two threads that they want us to look at. A bit more challenging, we have to define that and figure out how we can show and demonstrate in action growth in those areas, and we'll be working on that. You know that this year on September 9th, we surpassed 14,000 students. The board, in the board meeting we just had, have said that their expectation is we sustain those enrollments, sustain them, so that this year that we do not decrease in our enrollments. And the challenge for us will be that nursing is finished. We have our last cohort of nursing this year, which was 350 students approximately that we brought in. So that was our growth this year in enrollment. So next year to sustain, and I will credit the board, Mark Brigham is here from the board and Jim Tompkins, our chancellor here. They recognize that the demographics and the high school graduations are dropping. They recognize the challenges around recruitment and have not asked us to increase enrollments, but been very clear, try to sustain them coming up. And they've been also very clear that they are interested in us increasing in our indigenization efforts the numbers of First Nations, Inuit, and Aboriginal students that we have on campus. So that will be an area we'll continue to work on. The board also, even though it's not articulated explicitly in our strat plan, the area of an inclusive campus is important. So continued focus on a diversity of our students and supports for them. One of the areas that have been pointed out to me from the work of faculty is our new immigrants that come to campus don't get the same support as our international students. And the number of new immigrants are increasing that we serve on our campus. So I know John Smith is looking at a program specific to support students who are new immigrants. The area also that we'll be really focusing on, I'll need a lot of your help around student success. If we're looking at courses in which we've seen significant student dropout or failure rates. And what we want to do is find out a way to support you as faculty in those courses. We do not want to change the expectations or the quality of the courses. What we want is to find a way to support the professors and the students in it. So maybe for some of those courses, I'll use an example from my past. A calculus class at the University of Prince Edward Island had high withdrawal and failure rates. So we required students to do a pre-calculus program to come into the calculus class. And that worked really well in ensuring that the professors teaching calculus had students that had the background needed to be successful, or some of them, more of them, in that class. So that's the kind of initiative we're looking to you to help us with, to identify areas that we can truly help our students be successful. Without, and I'm going to be clear, I don't want anyone compromising quality or their expectations on the students, but other ways we can find to support students. Program development that we are looking at, you're going to see in the budget that we have put money into scholarships. We heard from you as the professors on campus in particular that our graduate students' support is really needed. And it's tough in a budget where you're trying to find $3 million, and I hope that the faculty will see that we're doing our best to invest in that. What I've asked Dave Malloy and Brian Christie to do is to give me the data in the last 7 years since I've been here, how much money we've actually put into research. And they haven't got that for me yet, but they're working on it. Because I know from the investments we've made that we've increased the support in research. But I need to demonstrate and show you that, because I know that there's some doubt on that for some of the faculty members. So you'll see quite a bit of support in research and graduate students in our budget this year. The UR Guarantee Program. This will be the first year we have cohort graduating, so it'll be interesting to see how many are successful and get employment and how many come back to the campus. But right now we have 1,400 students in that program. And so that's an area we're going to watch closely as we go forward. I want to also highlight that that the national reputation of the university is one that I'm going to be working on in the next couple of years. We have Congress in 2011, so 2018, sorry, not 11. So we'll be looking at, I'm going to be working more with faculty and staff, trying to encourage more op-ed pieces, more profiling, more communication to public about what we do here on this campus. And I want our faculty to feel comfortable and safe in articulating views that are challenging to government, challenging to society in these pieces. So I'm going to provide some supports for any faculty, and I did that before. I had Sherry Graydon in that worked with a number of women faculty on writing, and I'm going to really work in the next few years on trying to support you, faculty and staff, by the way, in writing more and getting more of a profile for the university. And we've done well. Our university press, for example, has, it was slated, it was on the chopping block 2 years ago because of budgets. And they have completely turned the press around and now are producing award-winning books that are enhancing the university's reputation. So, you know, that's an example of an area that we did see complete flip and support. And we've got some great examples of some books. Clearing the Plains is one that got a lot of national awards. I also feel that now we have some stability on campus. We have our senior team is in place. There's no acting on the senior team. That gives me a sense of relief. And so we can go forward. And we have great deans, the dean cohort, the AVP, so the leadership is stable and committed to you and this campus as we go forward, and that will be important. Challenges we have, though. Infrastructure, in particular in engineering, is a big, big challenge for us. I think SM's here, we can't really accept any more students in engineering, and we have a lot of demand for programs, in particular petroleum engineering, am I correct? Other challenges, you know, in terms of physical space, College Avenue campus, we are still working on trying to secure money for the renovation of that historical property. And I know for some of you it doesn't affect you directly, but we have 360 of our faculty and staff who work at a College Avenue campus. So they're often invisible to you, or they are our colleagues who deserve a place to work where they're not, they don't get heat stroke in the summer and have to wear mittens in the winter and the workplace. Demographic shifts are concerning me very much, and we're watching carefully. And you know, the Liberal Arts Advisory Group that I struck has been very, very good in the fact that we've had lots of wonderful dialogue about enhancing arts on campus and in the community and what we can do about that. A look at the liberal arts. It is a challenge not just for this university. It's a challenge nationally and internationally. And I don't have any solutions, and I need support again, in particular from the scholars that are in the humanities and liberal arts and science to kind of really look at what we're doing, and is there something we can do to enhance the reputation and attract students back into those programs. As an English grad, I know the benefit of a liberal arts degree and how it serves you all the way through your career. Other challenges that we really, I think, faced up to when I invited the provincial auditor in, asked them to come in to look at our research enterprise. I took a hit publicly, a big one, you know. They ended up with 26 recommendations. And I want to just reinforce that the university asked them to come in because that's what I believed was a high-risk area. We didn't have the tight policies in place. We didn't have the supports for faculty. We weren't clear on many of the things. And they came in, and I was right. All of those things were problematic. And they brought in the recommendations. They just reported to our board that we have made tremendous progress in dealing with all of most of those 26 recommendations. But it's going to be an ongoing process for us. And we'll see that same with the procurement audit. We've dealt with almost all the recommendations in that area. Some of these things you might find are frustrating for you, but with the focus on transparency and accountability now, we have to be able to put the policies and processes in place that protect you and protect the institution. And as frustrated as you get, remember that that's the purpose of them, to support and protect you on that. When you're not clear about the rules on how you spend money, then sometimes you can spend money that don't fit into the system and the rules, and that makes you vulnerable. So we want to work on that. You've challenged me to be open and transparent about finances. As you know, I put up all my travel for the last 7 years online. We put up line-by-line budget up for people to scrutinize. The Council Committee on Budget gave us guidelines and principles that we took to the board, and the board incorporated that into the approach that they're taking. We have a new policy that was just approved on budget process by the board, in which transparency is clearly articulated as a front-end principle. So again, we're learning with you on how to satisfy your need for transparency and what you want to see, and I'm going to continue to do so. So, you know, challenge me and help me give you what you need so that you're confident that the public dollars invested in this institution are wisely stewarded. And so I will, you know, ask questions, you know, ask me anything about the budget and going forward. In this budget, you'll also see that our senior team, the university leadership team, has taken no economic increase this year. So they are, you know, themselves, well, one was we got a letter from the Premier asking us to look at that. So we made the decision that the senior team and the board accepted it. The board made the decision that the senior team will not be getting any economic increase this year at all. And we'll see what happens as we go forward in the future. So there are many challenges we're facing. You're going to see with the budget that we're not going to make everybody happy. This was, my understanding, the toughest budget that we had to do this year. We're lean. It's really tough to find places to cut now. And I've really made it, as you know, I made the commitment that positions, we would try to preserve people in positions, not necessarily positions, but the people in them. And this year, we, to the best of our knowledge, have been able to do that there will be no layoffs, but there are positions cut, for sure. And that has pros and cons. Some people say that you know, it's better to do layoffs because then you can target that. And my philosophy is that every single employee on this campus is valued, and therefore we need to treat everyone with absolute respect in terms of job security and as we go forward. So that brings me back to the very beginning, back where we started with our strat plan. You know, there are many things we need to do, many things we want to do as we move forward. We need to address priorities in light of the budget challenges and always keep our students front and center in mind, and the investment we make should always benefit them. But we have a new strat plan that we're going to continue to move forward on in more challenging economic times than we may have had in the past, because every year, tell you it gets tougher and tougher. So I'll ask the provost now to just give you the budget details, and then we'll entertain questions from you on the budget or any other issue that you would like to raise. Okay, Provost?
Thanks, President Timmons. Some of these slides you will have seen at previous forums. They've been updated with this year's figures, the 15-16 figures. The detail behind these figures is available in the comprehensive budget document and the budget letter that will be available on the website, the budget update website on Friday. And the comprehensive budget document is already up there. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But on the revenue side, we're looking at $207 million for the operating budget this year. And you can see about 111.8 is coming in from government funding, 74.5 million now in tuition and fees. And what that reflects is the increasing trend across North America for student tuition and fee revenue to occupy more and more of the operating budget of universities. Government support hasn't diminished. In fact, it has increased slightly, but it is not increased at a pace that allows us to mitigate this kind of increase in tuition. On the expenditure side, we're going to spend $154.6 million on salaries and benefits. So roughly 75% now of everything we spend in the operating budget goes to the salaries and benefits of our employees, of all groups, faculty, staff, APT, QP, out of scope, and so on. And then you can see other parts. There's the scholarship monies at 8.7. Library acquisitions, we'll come back to that a little bit later. 7.7 on utilities such as natural gas, water, and so on and so forth. And the other includes things, we went into some detail about this at the last one, and all of that detail is still available, but it includes things, for example, such as the space rental that we pay over in Tour Research for the Johnson Shyama School, the space rental that we pay in Innovation Place at Saskatoon for the social work program, space rental for nursing up there, and expenses like software licensing for Banner, for Turnitin, for all of the software that we use in the institution, and things like that. So that's the other, and again, the full breakdown of other is available on the previous slide deck. The board yesterday approved an average tuition increase of 3.6%. That is slightly higher than the University of Saskatchewan approved this year, but the University of Saskatchewan approved a higher tuition increase than we did last year. So roughly speaking, we're remaining not very far apart on tuition. I want to say before we move beyond that, that leaves the University of Regina in the top third of English language Canadian universities in terms of tuition and fee affordability. There's a lot of confusion out there, a lot of confusion that you see in the media, because when we cite our figure, we're citing the total of tuition and fees, the actual out-of-pocket expense that students pay us. Some universities provide only tuition and omit the fees. So ours are going up by an average of 3.6%. The undergraduate rate is 3.8%. What does that mean in real terms for students? If I don't see many students in the room, but for your sons and daughters, perhaps. It means for a first-year arts student coming in, second year we'll say, taking a load of 4 courses, it's an additional $87 this fall over last fall. What are we doing with that? Well, before we go to that, we're not changing the international tuition or fee structure. That structure remains the same. And the graduate tuition increases vary from 0% in the Levine School to 3.9% at the graduate level. But what are we doing with it? A couple of things. As I said, tuition and fees are occupying more and more of what we need to run the university on a day-to-day basis. It's now 36% of the operating budget. That tuition increase, approved yesterday by the board, will provide the university with, roughly speaking, another $2 million in operating revenue. And what we're projecting that on, as the president says, is essentially flat enrollments going into the next year. So we're going to do our best to maintain our current level of enrollments, and if we do that, we estimate an additional $2 million in additional revenue coming in from that tuition increase. What are we doing with that money? We're putting 61% of that additional money right back into the hands of students in the form of scholarships, and more on that in a moment. But just a reminder, and I've already said this actually, we're still very competitive with English language Canadian universities in terms of total tuition and fees. We don't like to increase tuition, but we think in the balance of the challenges that we're now facing, this is reasonable, particularly given that 61% of it is going back out into the hands of students. A couple of other items in the budget. Between the 1st of July 2013 to the 1st of July 2015, there will have been 33 tenure-track hires. So if everyone who is scheduled to join us on the 1st of July, and I'm looking for Neil, we often speak of this, gets off the plane, gets in from the airport, and comes to campus on the following Monday, will be good, and that'll be 33 tenure-track hires and 7 conversions. That's not the Road to Damascus conversion, that's the conversion from term positions to tenure stream positions, 7 of those. Student financial support. One of the things we heard very loudly, very clearly over the past year and a half is the need to be more competitive in the support that we are providing to research graduate students. These are people doing the MAs, the MSCs, and the PhDs in the research areas, not the professional graduate degrees, but the research degrees. So we have taken a large part of that additional tuition revenue, put $550,000 into PhD scholarships, and there's an additional $640,000 in provincial support that flows through the operating budget that will go into the hands of students. And apart from that, Universities Canada, just renamed, it was AUCC, but is now called Universities Canada, matched a $500,000 investment by the university to provide study abroad opportunities for graduate students. 40 of our graduate students will now have funding to go and pursue some study abroad experiences, and I believe it's 12 incoming students will be able to take advantage of that as well. Other new support, and again the detail will be available in the comprehensive budget plan and the budget letter on Friday, totals $1.1 million. So at a time of tight financial constraint, we are trying very hard to respond to the need articulated across campus and certainly by the Dean of Graduate Studies to provide better support for our graduate students, who are a growing proportion of our campus population. In a discussion at a meeting just before this session, we were talking about if our traditional pool of domestic undergraduates is going to be drying up slightly for the next few years, do we need to make a concerted attempt to increase the proportion or percentage of graduate students on campus? If so, how do we do that? How do we achieve that? How do we support them? Other notable items in the budget, the position occupied by Dr. Pete, the executive lead for indigenization, has been up until this point soft funded. That is, it's not a base budgeted commitment. It is now, with board approval, a base budgeted commitment. So that becomes a permanent position, as does a new director of alumni affairs. Now, we need to say something about that because, of course, there's been a lot of discourse about administrative versus academic. So why would we do something like that at a time of real financial pressure? Here's why. At a session this morning on fundraising, we learned from our Director of Development that our roughly 64,000 alumni, that's about how many alumni we have from the University of Regina now, show a giving rate which is this. A little less than 1% of our alumni contribute to the university. That's a staggeringly low figure. And experience across the country, even in comparatively young universities like Regina, to say nothing of older universities like Mount Allison or McGill, shows that we really have to systematically reach out to alumni to get them to help support scholarships, to help support equipment, to help support the university generally. And we feel that this position will more than earn its keep and return a great deal more than we put into it in attracting and maintaining alumni financial support of the university. Library acquisitions, the library is the heart, in many ways, of the academic enterprise. We have been able to maintain the library acquisitions budget, but bear in mind, given the way that the exchange rate has gone, and given that we're buying a lot of stuff in American dollars, that actually probably will represent a slight diminution in truly available resources. Nonetheless, we did our best to keep the acquisitions budget flat. The Center for Continuing Education, which is unlike any of the faculties in that it has got to make all of its own expenses, all of the salary and benefits of its staff, and then return quite a bit of money to the main budget, which is then distributed out to all of the other operating units of the university, has been tasked to contribute $7.8 million. So that's $7.8 million that CCE earns through doing things like ESL, evening and weekend courses, all of the programming that they offer will result in a target of $7.8 million that is to go back into the operating budgets of arts, of science, and all of the other parts of the university. And we're looking for $1.5 million in savings in administrative units and in central services as part of this budget. The Voluntary Incentive Program for Retirement, again, we spoke of in both the previous fora. We'll just update you. There were 77 people eligible for that plan as it was approved last year by the board. 51 chose to take the plan. That was higher than we expected. 18 of those positions, 18 of the 51, were restaffed in calendar 2014. What that meant for us is that $1.5 million saved from the vacated positions were helped to balance the operating budget last year. The remaining 33 vacant positions were reviewed as part of the process leading to the formation of this budget. 23 of the 51 have been filled, and 28 vacant positions have been eliminated. And that has helped us in a very material way, as you see there, to help balance the budget this year. It has saved us $1.1 million. But that means that some positions that are vacant, obviously, are not going to be refilled. As the President has said, we've done everything we can to protect people and to manage the financial challenges that we face as a university through position and vacancy management. I want to echo what she said. It's something I feel personally very strongly, that all employees, all employee groups at this university are important. All employee groups have their own essential contribution to the operations of this university and the services we provide to students. And we're trying very hard to manage these challenges through vacant positions. The budget, and this is again something you've heard from us before, the budget provides $4.4 million for known and anticipated salary increases for all employee groups. We say anticipated because we have got one collective agreement in negotiation right now. But doing an estimate, we have set aside in the budget $4.4 million for increased salaries and benefits for all employee groups. I'm sorry, 4.4 in salary and 2.3 in increased benefits. That's an unusually high figure this year simply because of the cycle, the budget cycle, and the fact that some of the negotiated new benefits have not come on stream until a little bit later, so our costs are a bit higher as we catch up. But the figure we presented to you last time was 6.85. That's about 6.7 million, so we're pretty close on our estimate of what the additional costs this year for our existing complement of faculty and staff will be. And as the President said, the board approved yesterday that those in senior out-of-scope positions, that is ULT, that is the associate vice presidents, the deans, the executive team, and so on, will receive no economic adjustment this year. You're curious about what's happening to individual units. Operating budget allocations for academic units vary from plus 2%. And I want to just stop there for a moment since the President mentioned engineering. As it happened, about 20 minutes before coming down here, we had a young man show up in the President's office, quite upset, a petroleum engineering student who cannot get in to the class that he needs to get this summer. So I called the dean and I said, can you just give me an idea of where you're at right now? And his estimate was that there are at least 40 fully qualified students wanting to get into petroleum engineering for whom he has no space. We just don't have the space. We don't have the facilities. We don't have the teaching power. So that 2% reflects some allocations to units where demand is through the roof. In fact, we're not meeting student demand. -4 looks really startling for an academic unit until I tell you that it is a very small academic unit. It's Johnson Shayama Graduate School of Public Policy, and it represents, because it's a very small budget there, it represents one position that is already vacant. So that position is lost. It was a support position in the Outreach and Training Division of the Public Policy School. So most of the cuts to, all of the cuts to academic units are -3 or less, and in administrative units they range from -1 to -3. And again, this is in the context where we had to find more than $3 million in savings in this budget. So I said earlier, you'll be able to read this in great detail in the comprehensive budget plan that's up there now, and the line-by-line budget letter that all of the deans and the associate vice presidents will get will be up on that website by Friday afternoon. We're just doing final revisions to it now. I want to close and then turn it over for your questions with a graph you've seen before. And this is the operating grant from 09-10 to 15-16. What that means in simple terms is that in 09-10, all in, we got an 8% increase in the operating grant. This year, just above 1%, about 1.36%. That's the fiscal reality that faces us and faces many Canadian universities. Alberta got a cut, and they've already been told next year, although that may change after last night, that they're getting another cut next year. Ontario, the Maritimes, Quebec, everywhere, it's like this. But that's a large part of our story, and that's a large part of the reason that tuition and fee revenue becomes more and more important. Last year's budget, we made significant investments in research and teaching equipment. Engineering and science both got base budget allocations to improve teaching equipment. There's always more that can be done. We had no cuts to academic units last year. Now again, many misconceptions about that, but you've got to remember that every year that additional salary and benefit mass, because of salary and benefit increases, which we have negotiated and we will pay in good faith, go on to the faculty and operating unit budgets. So even though a position may not be replaced once it's vacated, the actual budget of the faculty or operating unit continues to rise to pay for increased salaries and benefits. And last year, there were across-the-board cuts to administrative units. We did -1 to -3 this year for the administrative units. Just a question that occupies us a lot of the time. If 2% or a smaller annual increase in the operating grant is the new normal, go back to that graph I just showed you a moment ago, what are the implications for our operations? And we're now trying to think this through. We hope that that will not be the case. But we're trying now to plan in response to government requests now for 3-year projections on the operating budget, the operations forecast. What if we're only going to get 2% a year or less for the next 3 years? What does that mean when our costs are increasing more than that every year? So, just to pick up a few things, I'm almost finished. We are focusing with the deans, with department heads, with anybody who will work with us on issues of student recruitment and retention. As the President says, our goal is to keep enrollment stable. After the fact that nursing is now effectively full, engineering is bursting at the seams, and other areas continue to decline. We're working very hard with student recruitment, with marketing, with individual deans to try to find ways to ensure that our enrollments remain stable. We're talking about changes to academic advising. Not a revolution, but a way of ensuring that we do not lose students we shouldn't lose. There are some students who come to university who don't belong for one reason or another, but there are many students who we lose we think we could retain if we were more effective at it, and we're looking at best practices and talking about ways of doing that. Threshold course support, again, the President has mentioned that. We have very high failure rates in some courses. That is normal in universities. We haven't been very good about supporting faculty and students to improve those failure rates without changing the requirements of the courses. The new residences, all of the literature and all experience shows that the more first-year students you have in residence, the better your retention rate is. Simply put, for a young student coming in from wherever, I'm going to pick a town at random, Wacaw, Saskatchewan, coming into residence rather than living in a basement apartment behind the Golden Mile somewhere almost guarantees a better chance that that student will stay from year 1 to year 2. Builds a sense of community, is with other students, has university facilities. So with the residences, the new residences opening this fall, with an additional 600 and... Didn't we just go up? 608? Whatever. 600 odd beds. Bettina, how many? 606. 606. And two in the same bed. This is very embarrassing. I was just going to say that Bettina ensured that it was only 1 to a bed. The President has now guaranteed the I-team will be in here in about 5 minutes. University of Regina promotes cohabitation to raise enrollments. I can see it now. New programs. The story you've all heard about again in the public policy school, a new master's program for mid-career professionals in health administration was launched. It has more than doubled its projected enrollments. We need to look in new ways about programs that will attract and retain new students to this campus. Revenue sources. Students are revenue sources. We don't think of them that way, but again, one thing that Harvey King has brought to the attention of Dean's Council is that the estimates are that there are approximately 18,000 people in the city of Regina alone who have partial university degrees, but for one reason or another haven't completed degrees. If we could attract even 10% of those people to pursue degree completion here, it would help us in a very material sense. Many of those people now, of course, are mature mid-career professionals. They're motivated. They have some disposable income. They've learned skills that they may not have had when they didn't finish their degree. So we're going to go after those. But we need to think in new ways of non-traditional student populations. Fundraising, we said earlier, it's going to become more and more important. We need to put more resources and develop more skills in that area. And we're going to keep on trying to control costs and promote efficiencies. I won't even mention thin toilet paper, because Dave Button is not here, and that's his area, not mine. Print optimization, we're rolling out phase 2. Phase 1 of print optimization has already saved us well over $1 million, and phase 2 will save us more than another $1 million if we succeed in implementing it well. So that's a very brief sketch. Again, this PowerPoint probably will be up there by now. There are 2 microphones here, and again, in the interests of the recording, and so that your colleagues in Saskatoon or PA or wherever they're watching this know who you are, please feel free to come up. Please state your name if you've got a connection with a particular department or you're a student or you're an alum. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. And the President will manage the questions. She's already indicated to me she will give me the nasty ones. So, floor is open.
Yes, please. Yes. George.
George Lawless, Physics. You mentioned that there are 40 or so students who are fully qualified to enter engineering, but they can't. Yet I have heard from many colleagues in engineering and a lot of graduate students that there is a significant fraction of the international students who certainly don't qualify because of language problems, algebra problems. So what is the criterion of getting into engineering from outside, like internationals, and the criterion for coming from local?
That's a fair question, George, and I might ask the Dean if he'd be willing to comment on that. Let me just lead off. Sam, if you want to come to the microphone, but the students I'm talking about are the students who meet all of our admission criteria. We know that there are some language difficulties. We know that there are some deficiencies, and it's not just students from elsewhere. It's local students who may have deficiencies in mathematics or calculus and so on. But the students we have are students who have been admitted under the university's rubrics and rules, who are qualified in that sense, but we do not have space for. Assam?
We are a fully accredited engineering program. 4 of our programs have 6 years accreditation, which is the maximum accreditation. So these programs are evaluated externally. They look at our student assignments, final exams, projects. It's a very thorough process. I don't know where you're getting that information from. Sorry. I'm proud of my students. And, well, you saw the announcement a couple of weeks back. One of our graduates, now the CEO, a major federal department, vice presidents here and there. We have a very strong engineering program.
Good.
I don't know where you're getting these facts from. They are not facts. Sorry.
I think, Assam, maybe if I could, George is, and I agree with you, I think the engineering program is wonderful. What George is pointing to is something we all know about. We have groups of students, and they're not just international, they're not just newcomers. They're students who, though they meet our admission requirements, have deficiencies. And one of the things the President was referring to with threshold courses, which can be applied more broadly, is how do we support these people? How do we give them the leg up they need in an area of deficiency so that they can be successful? And we're committed to trying to work with that when those problems.
I never said anything about engineering
Okay.
programs.
Okay, all good.
Don't get hot under the collar.
But it would be helpful if you hear those kind of rumors, because
They're not rumors, people talk to you.
Yeah, no, but about the accreditation, that the engineering did get the 6-year accreditation, which is the most they could ever get. So that is to the faculty and staff's credit. Yeah, good. Other questions or comments?
Hi. Trani Grand from English.
Hi, Trani.
Thank you for your presentation, much appreciated, both Tom and Vian. I liked your question, Tom, and at the end of your slideshow. What are the implications if 2% is the new normal, a 2% increase or lower? What are the implications? And one of the concerns I have as Department Head of English is our increasing reliance on sessionals. When positions are vacated, the units have to struggle, of course, to deliver the same kinds of programs for our majors, service courses. We teach everyone at the university and enjoy that privilege, but there are those people, there are honors students, there are graduate students, and all of those programs suffer when someone takes retirement. We're not allowed to replace the position, when term appointments are not renewed, and when the teaching goes into sessional appointments. It's kind of, in my mind, a dirty secret of the universities that from what I've seen, but I don't have any figures, and I'm hoping to get those figures, that a lot of our teaching increasingly is done by sessionals. And I know it's a clause in the collective agreement that the university will work towards reducing the numbers of sessionals and work towards teaching that relies on full-time people. And that, I think, is in place not just because of the financial exploitation of having the same people teach courses that faculty members teach at, let's say, 1/3 of the cost, Not just because of that, but because when we have sessionals, staffing, teaching our courses, we lose administrative people, we lose the committee people that were our retired people, that were such an important presence for our students and for our colleagues and for the university generally. So I don't want to go on too much of a rant, but I just want to know if there has been some thought put into the implications of an increasing reliance on sessionals, or how you have thought of addressing that.
So I'll mention that at the presidential level, there's lots of discussion on that. And when you get reduced resources and 75% of your budget is people, you need to take advantage when you have vacancies to manage, or some other way. There's not a university in this country that hasn't increased the use of sessionals over the last decade. So I don't have an answer to it, because it's a huge challenge for all of us that we look at. And there's many times sessionals, you want them teaching in fields like business and education. You want people who are in the field, who are well qualified, working with students, right? The frontline people. So there's many times that you want actually sessionals in it, but there are times when you do it because you have to financially. And so I think it's an issue here that we talk about. We don't have a solution. Right? And nor does any university in Canada. If you look at the number of tenured faculty in many of the American universities, they've been dropping dramatically. We haven't seen as dramatic a drop in Canada, but we also haven't seen as dramatic a drop in the public funding yet. We may not. Tom?
Trani, I hear you. That clause is very much still in the collective agreement. And as the President says, it requires resources that we don't have right now. Just a bit of an anecdote. In American universities, my understanding now is that fewer than 1 in 3 appointments is to the tenure stream. Everything else is contract work outside the major privates. So the state universities, fewer than 1 in 3 academic appointments is now to the tenure stream because they can't afford it. I was talking with the chancellor the other day, just received an award from he received the award, I didn't, from his alma mater. And I said, Jim, what's the proportion of the operating budget at Purdue, which is a very good school, that now comes from the state of Indiana. And Jim, I think it was 26%, so it's down to 26%. At Oregon, the University of Oregon, which is again a good university, the proportion of the operating budget that is paid for by the state of Oregon is now 4 cents on the dollar. That's the trend in the United States. We're nowhere near that in Canada. That doesn't mitigate the problems that you have raised. And I want to say too very clearly that sessional lecturers are incredibly valuable to the operation. We have many fine sessional lecturers. I can see a few of them in the room. They do fantastic service. Their students love them. But we do not have the financial resources to teach everything, or even as much as we would like, with full-time, fully paid, fully benefited faculty.
I'll give you an example here. So when I came, we were close to 60% provincially funded. Now we're closer to 50%. Right. So in the 7 years I've been here, that's a big drop in terms of percentage of provincial funding. Yes. Get up. Go to the mic, Chris. Thanks. Tanya, you go first. Tanya, you were at the mic first.
Thank you for that. Regarding the new position in alumni, the Director of Alumni Relations, I agree that 1% is an abysmal contribution from alumni. What will be the timeline to evaluate and justify that position? Would that be 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah. I had a review team come into our alumni and our donor relations, and we have 2 positions that operate more as support for Alumni Association and in a clerical way. We do not have a person who does a strategy on alumni. We have 2 people, right? So comparable universities, even much smaller ones, have way more. They were quite shocked at our last, and I will say that I've been negligent. This is one area that we should have invested in 7 years ago. It's one area, so I take the ownership for that we did not. So adding 1 position is the most minimal we could do. But we will be evaluating, and the board will hold us to that, to the performance measurement framework, the impact of it. And so I would say we'll be evaluating it every year as we go forward. And I have no doubt that it will very soon demonstrate its value, and if not, we'll have to revisit it. We are looking at restructuring and putting more events and external relation events and alumni together, so that when we do an event in a community, because you know I go all over the province, that the focus will be on at all of that time on also alumni, engaging alumni. So we're trying to be more strategic in the work that I do with a person who's thinking about that all the time. So I would say every year we're going to be evaluating it.
Okay, that's understood. I mean, I think it's important, but so then what would be the timeline if it wasn't successful for, would that be a decision of the board or?
No, that's management.
Okay,
yeah,
so
what,
so you evaluate it every year? And then
I'll evaluate every year, and if I see it's not progressing, then we have to reconvene and figure out, is it the person, is it the structure, is it, like we'll have to do as we do with everything, reevaluate. But it will be a yearly thing. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, one of the questions I've been asked is how much do we spend on fundraising? And this is another area that we need. The board has said to me I need to pay more attention to. We spend 15 cents for every dollar we raise for fundraising, right? Which is extremely low, extremely low. And so these are areas that I would say in the next 3 or 4 years I have to put a lot of attention on, the fundraising and the alumni. Chris?
I was very excited to see that one of the strategies that the university wants to consider for managing enrollment is new programs. And I was just wondering if that's going to take the form of maybe a new initiative to create new programs, maybe a call for proposals for new programs that would have funding associated with that, or are you more thinking in the context of the allocations already provided to faculties to come up with something on their own?
I'll ask the provost, that's under his.
We have a limited amount of initiative money. So let me give an example. The Faculty of Arts, going through the collegial approval process, the Faculty of Arts brought forward an idea for a new master's program in journalism, which as it turns out is going to launch this fall. So we looked at that very carefully. Brian Christie's office did all of the budget analysis. How much would it cost to run that program? What additional staffing do we need? 1.5 people, those people are in place. What is the likely tuition and fee revenue that program is going to earn over 7 years? The business case looked very good. It looked as if this thing would not only pay for itself, but help return funds to the Faculty of Arts and to the School of Journalism. And it then went forth through the collegial approval process, Arts, the Graduate Council, Executive Council, and was approved. And that thing is launching this fall. If you have an idea about a new program that you think will attract students we are not currently attracting, because we're not terrifically interested in cannibalizing existing programs, but if we can attract new students to this campus who otherwise wouldn't be there, please talk to your dean and please talk to me.
Okay, so just to be clear, so even if it came with an increase in a requirement for resources, it would be entertained?
We would then say, you know, if the dean and the faculty support the idea. Chris has got a wonderful idea for a new program, a master's program in experiential psychology. I'm making this up, right? So you go to your dean and the dean's council there and your faculty council and say, this looks really good. I'd like to put in a proposal. If there's support, it comes over to us. We would say, this looks kind of interesting. You or the proponents would sit down, probably with Brian and his team, and begin to flesh out a business case, which then would be looked at. If that business case looks pretty robust, we would recommend that it then go through the collegial approval process. And we would find ways to resource it on the understanding that the enrollments will be there to support those resources, which is what happened with the Master of Health Administration last year, more than doubled its projected enrollments. We're very happy with them.
Thank you.
What's the program?
Hi.
Hey.
I'm Tony from FM, and that was that Phil Knight guy from Oregon. He owns Nike. That's why he's giving him all the cap. We don't have a guy like that.
Not yet. We're going to work on it.
My question is, who decides which positions are going to be filled and which ones are not going to be filled? Mm-hmm. We lost a lot of guys recently, a lot of plumbers in my group, and we're always told we can't fill people. Mm-hmm. We can't fill jobs, so we're at least 2 people understaffed. Mm-hmm. Who makes that decision? You guys just give our FM the money and then they decide, or are you guys part of the discussion? Well,
we do 2 ways, to be honest. There's some, if we get if we do a cut to a unit, then the head of the unit will come back with a proposal to how they're going to manage that cut. So that could be a position. If a position becomes vacant, we have now the vice presidents responsible for scrutinizing every vacancy and whether and looking at whether we can fill it or not based on either budget or the job itself, and that comes forward. So there's two different approaches to jobs. So it could your unit may have been caught in both. I don't know if you had a vacancy, then that came forward to be filled. The vice president admin may have recommended that it not be filled. Okay. And if you had a cut to the whole FN budget, they may have then reduced it by a position. Mm-hmm. So it's two ways.
Okay, well, I know that at the end of 2014-15 fiscal year, we had a pot of cash in our labor bank for the mechanical crew. And it was a fairly substantial sum. It paid for at least two positions. Mm-hmm. And we were never allowed to spend it. So yeah. We're assuming it's just gone.
It's probably gone. And what we did is many units had money that they were holding for vacancy positions, and that's almost the first that we drew on, right, to balance the budget. Rather than, again, getting rid of people, we took that money. Mm-hmm. So
okay,
you're absolutely, that's probably exactly what happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Now, there are no vacancy positions funded, so that's where we're getting into really tough positions.
Are there other questions?
Any other questions or comments? So I want to thank Tom, and I want to thank all of you, and I'm going to put a proposal out to you that I did for the university leadership team. You know, when we get at budget time is when we look at many initiatives, and I want to start today looking at next year. So I asked the university leadership team to brainstorm any efficiencies or areas that they thought we could reduce expenditures. And I'm going to put the call out to you as a campus to do the same thing for me. So I'll give you an example that I put forward. And I said no idea is too crazy. We have to look at everyone. So don't yell at me. That doesn't mean we're going to do it. We're going to look at it, though. I said, my phone on my desk doesn't ring very much anymore. Do I need a desk phone? Could we have one phone, desk phone in my office that's with my EA that I don't actually have a desk phone anymore? Can we reduce the desk phones? Because I get a lot of calls on my cell phone, but not on my desk phone anymore. So that was what a proposal I put out. So I asked Dave Button to take a look at whether we can reduce the desk phones across campus and what the savings would be. Those are the kind of things I want us to start looking at now in preparation for a new world that we are in. So I'm going to put a call out to you. I'm going to ask you to email me personally at vian.timmons@uregina.ca. That just comes to me, no one else, and just send me any idea you have. I want you to look at your own units first, because it's very easy to say, well, I think we should cut donor relations when you've never worked in it, you've never really understood or seen it. But if you still think we should cut another area, put it in there, but also focus on things you know really well that you think we could do better on. Or, if you've seen, me do something that you think, you wonder why I've done it, then give me that information. So any ideas that you can think of, will you email me? And just say, I wonder why we do this. Could we stop this practice? Or I wonder if we could do this. The same the other side. Any revenue generating ideas that you have. Any areas that you think we could besides tapping donors, that we could maybe get more revenue to support the campus endeavor. So I'm going to ask you to do that and to email me on that. Implementing this budget will be a challenge, and I know that lots of thought went into development, lots of agonizing, and some of your units are going to feel it. We just heard, 2 positions down in the plumbing area. It's going to hurt us this year, and I know in faculty, both in the faculties and the min units, it's going to be tough. And I just want to say that we're going to work with you as much as we can to support you in trying to get through this. And this is an endeavor that all of us have to be part of to make this place work well and move forward under very difficult fiscal times. This university, in my view, punches way above its weight. And I want to preserve and honor everything that you do to have that profile. This is a university that the community calls their university now. And we also, at the same time, We are so privileged in the work we do. And I want us to continue to do that amazing work we have. And every time I think about the funding to the university, I do recall and make myself recall that it's my mother's taxes that pay for us to do the work we do. And we have to honor that and be open, transparent, and accountable. And any ideas you have, I want you to send them to me, but in that light, that we can make sure that we honor the investment that the public gives us in our university. Right? They pay our salaries, our jobs, and we have fabulous jobs. And we get to work with the next generation. We get to shape the future. And I don't think there's any more noble cause that there could be. And you do that, and you do that extremely well. So thank you, and I look forward to your emails. And like I said, you can send me an email on anything. And let me know what you think about getting rid of desks, phones. Okay? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.